So I know that a lot of people might not particularly agree with this sentiment, but honestly, necromancy as a school and system of magic does not deserve half of the hate it gets. And you might be saying, Smiles, my man, look at how necromancers are portrayed in media. You know, these aren't like love and light and helping people kind of characters. These are very much so characters of destruction, characters of using the souls of either fallen comrades or just the innocent to do their bidding. And I agree with you. I agree with you a lot. And I'm not discrediting this aspect. If you look at things like modern fantasy, cinema, and even just other sorts of influences, you can see that necromancers are given off in this very malevolent context. However, I wanted to kind of shed some light on this take and maybe provide my own. I think that there's a lot of other abilities when it comes to either in like D&D and TTRPGs that involve necromancy that really should be framed in a more benevolent light as a counter in a way to the negatives of necromancy. For example, once again, if we're looking at this through the lens of like D&D, you have spells like True Resurrection, Revivify. These are your big healing, you're not dying today kind of spells. And for a majority of parties out there, these are game changers. These are the spells that you use where you basically turn to someone at the table and say, you don't need a new character sheet today. And for anyone asking, most of the time, that's a really good thing. A lot of times people don't really want, actually no, that's not 100% true. People do really want to roll up new character sheets all the time, but they don't really want to kill off their characters to get there is the thing. And let's be real, for all of us who play TTRPGs here, everyone wants to roll up a new character sheet. The only issue is that there's only so many games you can actually roll up a new character sheet for. Joking aside though, spells like these are very important to the game as a whole. It helps keep your party alive. And even too, other big spells like Speak with Dead can also be used in such a way where it doesn't have to give off this negative context. For example, Speak with Dead as a spell allows you to gain information that previously would have just been completely lost. It can be a great aid to your party, and even too, it can be really good for DMs to allow that further lore dump into their world if they're so inclined. And of course too, as I'm looking at some of these different elements of spells, yes, I'm aware that often necromancers get this really bad rap because of how they use their different spells and abilities. However, there are a lot of these different positive aspects when you really stop and look at them and think about them. For example, if D&D is a game that's meant to be, about you being the heroes, you have a surprising amount of character options that are designed for you to just be the heroes. For example, you have Undead Warlock, you have Shadow Sorcerer, you've got Phantom Rogue. All of these little features give you that spooky kind of edge that also just fringe on the cusp of necromancy or having something to do with necromancy in your lore and backstory. And of course, with this, you can make these really cool necromancy-inspired characters while also not diving into the deep end of, I'm just going to be this evil necromancer and just raise armies of the dead. And the funny part is, you can even do that and still be a good aligned character. It's hard and a little weird to do that, definitely morally gray to a lot of extents, but you can actually do that. So in this case, you're using these tools that in some cases might seem a little shifty, but you can still use them in a way that's positive. In addition to this, not only do I think necromancy gets the worst rep out of any school of magic in D&D and TTRPGs as a whole, but I also don't particularly know why. And now, as I was mentioning before, I get, it's the spooky aspect. It's also the trope of you've got a lot of these evil necromancers running around. But also, I'd like to call to attention a majority of the other aspects of unethical magic in D&D. For example, you have enchantment magic. And now, once again, this is a take that a lot of people might not particularly agree with. And of course, any sort of spellcast or any sort of spell that you use, you can use for good. Just remember that. Despite this, when you actually look at a lot of the enchantment spells in D&D, they are literally all about taking away a living creature's free will in some capacity. It is a magic system that is made to affect the mind of another living creature. so that you individually can gain some sort of benefit. For example, you have Charm Person, a spell that is designed to go and give you bonuses on persuasion and, just kind of help nudge people in the right direction of where you want them to go. Another particularly noteworthy enchantment spell I would like to cover within this is the spell Modify Memory, which is basically just casting Gaslight on someone. It's an enchantment spell that basically makes them forget a certain instance of time and then remember it how you want them to remember it. And of course, there are ways that you can use these spells in a very ethical sense, but at the same time, it does raise the question of how far can a magic system go past the point of morality, and are we really blind enough to think that necromancy is the only one that's actually crossed the line? For example, let's look at another school of magic, illusion. I love illusions. I think they're really cool. I think a lot of people want to be dazzled. But at the end of the day, illusion and the very nature and magic of illusion is about deception. It's about showing people things that aren't there, or showing people the wrong things. Sometimes, too, you can create illusions that are so real to the creature viewing them that they actually experience the pain as if that illusion was there, trying to harm them. And we also have a number of these sorts of spells in D&D already. For example, Phantasmal Force. This is a spell that basically convinces a target, hey, you're not only getting attacked by this illusion, but you're also getting hurt by it. And there's literally nothing that you can do about it until the spell ends. In addition to this, furthering our adventure down the rabbit hole, divination magic can also be a little interesting in certain contexts. For example, I think this really speaks as a testimony to divination magic as a whole. There is actually a number of spells that are made simply to counter the effects of divination magic. One particular spell being Mordenkainen's Private Sanctum. And what this spell does is it creates a room that you as an individual cannot see into with divination magic. Things like clairvoyance don't work in there, and you can't actually look into this room unless you physically go in there in person and see what's going on. And my man Mordenkainen might have been onto something, because you have all of these sorts of spells in the divination school of magic. But yes, using divination spells, you can use them to gain a lot of clarity on things you didn't particularly know before, or that you wouldn't have known normally. Things like legend lore is a perfect example of this. The spell literally divination is another great example. But you also have spells that are made for the sole purpose of ripping any and all shred of personal privacy out of another creature's life. For example, scrying is a great testimony to what I'm talking about here. This is a spell that you can pop whenever. You don't know what you're going to see on the other side. The other person that you're scrying on doesn't always particularly know that they're being scryed on either. All you do is just sit back and watch the life and times of whoever you're spying on. And that, in a lot of contexts, can be very unethical and very concerning. But of course, to kind of get things a little back on track here, while I am showing these sort of darker sides of magic within D&D and, potentially other TTRPGs, I know that some spells in D&D definitely cross over into different works of fiction as well as in just different TTRPG systems as a whole. I do want to bring up how these are tools, and how you ultimately use a tool is up to your sense of morality. And I think that for a lot of people, they would want to play characters like necromancers, but also sort of feel like they're kind of stuck into the trope of, well, if I'm going to play a necromancer, I'm probably going to make them evil. Just because that's kind of how necromancy works. It's like, no, you don't actually have to. There's a lot of different and really cool concepts that you can take and make for a necromancer that doesn't make them this evil character. For example, if we're talking about this through the scope of D&D, things like Grave Cleric and even Death Cleric can be really cool and interesting subclasses to take for your characters to kind of give them that connected to the afterlife flavoring. And as I was saying before, we also have a bunch of other subclasses too that are more death flavored. For example, we have Spirit's Bard, which is a bard that's focused on telling these stories of the departed. So you have a lot of these interesting sort of seance flavoring abilities within the subclass. and it can really help provide a lot of support and utility for your character and even your party as a whole. So in all, what I'm trying to say is don't let other people make you feel like you have to play a character a certain way. If you want to make a very good aligned necromancer, then do it. No one's going to stop you. And more importantly, have fun and enjoy it. I mean, this is, 'tis the season to be spooky. So regardless, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope it gave you something of a better perspective on necromancy as a magic system as a whole. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, then please like and subscribe for even more D&D content. And in the meantime, keep smiling, keep scheming, and I'll see all of you next time.